Can all join palms? And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you here? Welcome.
I just wanted to get good at meditation, and my roommate kind of suggested that this is the place.
Is that your roommate?
Yeah.
You told this was the place to get good at meditation?
Not really that.
Liar. You will not get good at it. I promise. That makes the expectations easy though, right? I mean, piece of cake from here. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Thanks. What else? Who's here for the first time? I saw a couple hands. I just see a hand. I don't see anyone else. There we go. Yeah. Hi. Hi.
Do you want me to say something?
Sure, if you want. I mean, I'm just always curious why people show up here for the first time, and nothing else was on my mind that I wanted to say, so I always go to that.
I've just been meditating for a while and kind of was looking to explore it in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Anybody else first time here? Want to share why they're here, sitting? Those of you keep coming back, why do you keep coming back? It's a lot warmer here. Why show up here? What do you think? Yeah.
I'm still trying to understand why being late all the time to some people is when you see that as okay. I don't know how to ask the question. Last week
Oh, I didn't say it was okay. I never said being late was okay. I mean, you can pull up the film. It's like after a football game, you can review the film and see if I said that.
Instant replay.
But I'm pretty sure I just said to the people that were sitting in the back, I'll leave names out. They're not here tonight, even though everybody knows, most of us know who they are. I didn't say it was okay. Actually, that would be great if they're walking in right now. Because I just saw shadows of people coming in, so it might be them. I didn't say it was okay. I just said it's what they do.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
And she wasn't having it.
Yeah, it was in the context of several issues you were talking about releasing control.
Yes.
Or wanting to have control over other people, and that
Yeah.
there was quite a lot of back and forth, and I went away still pondering. I haven't been pondering.
You haven't figured it out? But you weren't late tonight, so that's good. Yeah.
No, I'm not the one. I'm the other side of the issue, feeling like it's disrespectful when people that I've made an agreement with to come, that they show up a lot late. I'm not talking 5-10 minutes. I'm talking an hour and a half.
So is there a moment where being late is acceptable versus not acceptable? What if they're just really early for tomorrow's class? So, I mean, we could do this all night, I'm sure. But for those who missed the fun of the dialogue that occurred last week, that they're always just asking about their relationship sitting next to each other as they have for many years, and now brought a child into the world, and this was their date night, and they were asking questions about, how do you learn to be okay with someone who's late? And I immediately just kind of moved it away from late, not late, on time, not on time, to the fact that we spend so much of our time trying to control how other people are. So the ultimate reality is it's not about being late or not being late. Those are just constructs that you are stuck in. If you are constantly around someone that is always not arriving when you want them to arrive, and you don't want that to occur anymore, you don't have to see them. You can stop saying, hey, let's meet up. But if they are someone who's always going to arrive in a time that is different from what you are expecting, then just know that's how they are. And if you can surrender this expectation of wanting them to be there exactly when you think they should be there, and knowing that you don't know what they went through. Anyone had a hard time ever just trying to get out of bed and make it to the kitchen to get coffee? Not to mention actually getting up and getting dressed and going somewhere to meet somebody. You have no idea what their struggle is like. How depressed they are, how anxious they are, how miserable they are. They have no idea what their life is like. But what we do know is what we want, which is someone to show up at the time that we expect them to show up. So it does. It comes down to our desire to control who and how other people are. And if we are not okay with that, then like I said, they could stop making plans. That's never going to happen. So the reality is he is always, and I've known them for years, so I feel confident and comfortable saying this behind their back, even though they're probably sitting at home watching this. He, for the rest of their life, is always going to be late. I can promise you that. And so she has a choice. Just embrace the fact that he's late. Or not. Her suffering is going to be based on whether she expects him to be different from who and how he is. So, and this is just, the practice when you look at Buddhist teachings, then we'll move on to meditation so you can get good at it, my friend. The practice of understanding Buddhist teachings is to really begin to see that this idea of being late or on time is just a metaphor for everything in our lives. That we have an idea of how we want things to work out. And because we're stuck in that box, anyone here read much of Krishnamurti? Krishnamurti is brilliant with this stuff. He just shatters all of it. It's like Buddhism. Why are you wasting your time with Buddhist stuff? That's just some construct. You should shatter all of that. He's brilliant, right? And here we are still talking about this Buddhist stuff. But anyways, not the point. We get stuck in these boxes of how we want the world to be. And because it doesn't align with our expectations of how we want the world to be, we suffer. So it's, again, not about being late or on time. It's about your reaction to that situation. So with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. It's not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. Right? You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, I'm laughing because the two comments here are audio is terrible and very, very choppy, like water's not much I can do about that right now, And this plays into exactly what I was just talking about. Audio is terrible. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do about that in this moment, right? They can either hang on and watch this for the next 45 minutes and blah, blah, blah about how choppy it is and how terrible it is, or they could just go back to watching TV. It's up to them. It's their struggle, you know. I don't know if they heard that or not because it's breaking up. So I'm not sure how that played out, but we'll see. So find a position that's comfortable. If you want a cushion, often it helps slide into the front and third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed, hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you're on a bench or chair, same thing. Just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. Oh, they're so stubborn. They're staying on, I guess. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation and breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sound, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize every feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. All we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Everybody's living their own life. And yet we get so disturbed by everybody living their own life. Most of us have enough going on in our own lives to be disturbed by. If for some reason we add on everybody else's mess to ours, it's if we don't have enough to be disturbed by from our own madness. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else. And that's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But that's why it's a practice. It's not a quick fix. It's not 6 weeks and all of a sudden we got it all figured out. It's just sitting and breathing. The rest of your life is there. We're not meditating to improve that meditation. It's not about getting better here. It's how it impacts your life outside of here. That's where meditation makes a difference. I mean, so what if you can sit perfectly still and not move for 8 hours straight and just focus on your breath? If the moment you walk outside and somebody looks at you the wrong way and all of a sudden you're annoyed, irritated, bothered, well, what is the point of this? This is practice. Learning to stay present, learning to breathe, learning to bring attention and awareness to sensation of breath. So when you're out there, outside of your temple or spiritual place or yoga practice or whatever you call it, when you're out there and the world doesn't do what you want it to do, which is pretty much going to be every day for the rest of your life, you're able to just recognize, oh yeah, the world's not doing what I want it to. Back to my breath. 3 seconds later, there we go again. The world is not doing exactly what I want it to. Back to the breath. And that just is repeat. So that's what we're practicing. We're just practicing what it's like to come back to present moment sensation of breath. As opposed to the stories that you carry in your head for weeks and months and years about all the other people and places and things that we disagree with. And then we let everybody know about all the other people and places and things that we disagree with. And then we just keep adding more fuel to that fire. And then we're angry, and we're miserable, and we're sad, and we're stressed, and we're anxious, because all we did was talk about all the people and places and things we don't like. But the good news is you can then show up here at 7 o'clock every night and make everything okay. So, someone said to me the other day, they said, what do you, well, the way they phrased it was, they said, what do you do? But they weren't referring to me personally. It was, the way they asked it was referring to them. But they said, what do you do when things get really hard? What do you do with practice? I said, you just keep practicing. Things are always going to be really hard. This idea that one day all of a sudden life is just going to be simple, it's not reality. Life is always going to be difficult. You are always going to face challenges. They're just going to change. And your ability to be with them or not be with them determines whether you're at peace or not. So that's the practice. So with that, I'll pause. As always, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And I just got to thank you for providing the online practice. We appreciate it. So apparently they can hear something. So that's good. And you're welcome. So we'll open up to questions again, virtually, same thing. If you can hear, feel free to put questions in the chat box there and I'll do my best to respond. So we'll use the rest of our time for questions. Yes?
When you come in each week, you do a small ritual or set of activities. Can you explain a little bit what you're covering?
Yes. Yes. I'm simply praying to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of all time, all space, and all directions to heal us all, because God knows we need it. Does that answer your question? Yeah, it's in Buddhism we call it taking refuge. And so for me as a practitioner, it's very important to me every time I do what I consider formal ritual practice. So if I'm sitting here in front of a bunch of people and I'm going to lead a meditation and share the Dharma, that's a very formal ritual practice. One that would normally be done in robes and have certain ceremony that goes along with it. But for me, it's also important to shatter all of that because that's all meaningless. But in my heart, it's still important as a practitioner to take refuge. So I recite the triple gem, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha, which is not the Buddha himself, he died, he can't help you now, you're on your own. He died 2,500 years ago, give or take. And we take refuge in what's called bodhicitta, which is Buddha nature, which means we are no different than he was. We're just a human doing our best and we can end our suffering. By using the second one, which is the Dharma, and those are the teachings, loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom, all the key buzzwords that you hear around Buddhism that are in every Buddhist book you'll open up, right? So we find safety, comfort, protection in that. And then the Dharma, or the Sangha, is the community that comes together to practice. And for the most part, people here treat you nicely, and that helps. If we were all screaming at you, it would expedite your practice, but you might not come back. So, yeah. But I like my first answer better. Yeah. What else? So there's a question here. How do you let go when you work with an individual who's unethical and operates from a place with no morals, I find it hard not to judge. Yeah, it's hard not to judge. You know, and even if you were here, I'd respond the same way, although it's a little more challenging virtually. But, you know, for me, without getting into details, obviously the dynamic and the person that you're dealing with, you know, sometimes, as I alluded to earlier, with, you know, people showing up late, sometimes we have the luxury, if it's, you know, maybe just a casual friend or something like that, to just kind of separate and move them out of our lives, or we move out of their lives. And sometimes, you know, we're stuck, meaning it's not so simple, whether it's a family member or colleague or whatever it is. Well, even there, you could just quit. But it's not so simple always to just remove certain people from our lives, as much as you may wish you could. And so the reality is, the way you phrase the question of how do you let go when you're with an individual who is unethical and operates from a place of no morals, you don't need to let it go. I'm not a fan of the phrase letting it go. I never have been, because letting it go is, to me, just almost seems as if like you don't care about it, you know? I don't know about you, but when you're dealing with something and someone comes up to you and says to just let it go, normally it just pisses you off even more. So I'm just not a fan of like letting it go. What I am a fan of is you recognizing that someone's operating from a place that you perceive. And again, of course, you can debate this, but you're not here to debate it, so I kind of win here. But your perception is they're unethical and they have no morals. Now, I'm not going to argue with that, obviously. No, I have no idea what the situation is, but you don't have to let that go. Let's just say that is the case, that they are unethical and operate from a place with no morals. So I don't advise you to let that go. I advise you to recognize that they're unethical and operate from a place with no morals. Kind of like the person who's late. They're just late. This person's unethical. They have no morals. That's who they are. Don't let it go. Be with that. Meaning, observe that. Be aware of that. And if you can remove yourself from that situation, great. If you're stuck, then at least you know what you're dealing with. But trying to change them is usually where this becomes difficult. Embracing. And I'm also not a huge fan of acceptance, the way it's often thrown around, because when we say, well, I'll just accept them for how they are, what oftentimes that means is that, well, we don't agree with how they are based on our expectations of how we think people should be. So you're an absolute mess. I don't like you. You're a piece of blah, 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 but I'll accept you anyways. Right? As opposed to just saying, that's your perception of them. And maybe this is how they are. We don't know what led them to be, as you say, unethical and have no morals. Who knows what abuse, what trauma, what experiences they've had. Maybe the fact that they can even have a dialogue with you and smile at you while they're unethical and have no morals, maybe that's progress. We don't know. So open your heart, have compassion. If it's unsafe and unhealthy, get away. And as far as judgment, I mean, that one, regardless of the situation, we've all done good, we've all done bad, we've all harmed people, we've all harmed ourselves. You know, we don't want to roam around being judged all day long, even though we are. So try not to judge people. They're doing the best they can, whether you believe it or not. You know, we don't know what hand they've been dealt and what life they've gone through. So I've never found judging people to be a good practice at all. After 30 years of doing it, of course. So you're welcome. What else? Questions? Yeah.
This is more a reflection than a question, but a question might come. We're talking about control and wanting things to be different than how they are. Remember, probably a couple of weeks ago, you were speaking and you were saying, be aware of all sounds. And at that moment, someone's cell phone went off. And my reaction was visceral. I was like, oh my God. You know, you didn't seem to react at all. A couple of people laughed. And so I had to like explore what was that reaction about. And part of it was all of my training front of my Zen training, no cell phones, no sounds, no noise, don't, be on time, all of that. And so bit by bit, I'm letting go of that and realizing that life is how it is. But that it was interesting to me to see how strongly I reacted to that.
Yeah, we've had the same training.
I know.
And this isn't a comparison the way it's going to sound, but some of us are just better at it than others.
I'm still working on it.
You know,
Yeah.
and what I mean by that is, can we just not be so triggered by anything
Right.
from anyone ever? As you've heard me say for the years you've been around me, expect nothing from anyone ever. That's the practice. And the more we practice that, the easier this becomes. You know, I mean, regardless of the sounds, regardless of we already know that life brings sounds. And to put it in a context for those who maybe weren't here or haven't heard, me talk about this, we create these constructs in our lives, similar to what I was talking about earlier with the control, and specifically with sounds in a meditation hall, and specifically in the Zen practice, you're not just on time. Well, you're not too early too, because that would be just as bad as being late, but you are on time. And there are rules that you follow. And in that practice, you don't deviate from that. But in that practice, there's also an understanding that those rules are just nonsense, but you still follow them. You're just not attached to them, but you follow them. You ignore them, but you follow them. You're completely aware of them, and you follow them. But in our lives, can we just observe life as it occurs? Or are we still trying to feed everything into the story of how we want it to be? And when things like that come up, that's why I say, for me, years of just letting the guard down of expecting anything to be a certain way. And but at the same time, doing everything exactly how it should be done, but not attached to it. Yeah.
How about just having compassion for yourself for still getting triggered?
Oh, that's important. You say, how about it? Is that a question or just a statement? I'm all in, yeah.
I like acceptance, maybe just compassion.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean is I think when I say acceptance, what I mean by that is very often around kind of Buddhist circles, you hear people say, well, my so-and-so is this way, but I'm going to accept them. What that often means is we're throwing heavy judgment on them, but we're going to so kindly and graciously accept them as if that makes us these wonderful people, right? They're terrible at everything, but I accept them for how they are. Well, how nice of us, But yes, having compassion for self, first and foremost, is critical. Absolutely. And when we are triggered, as you say, especially, to have compassion for ourselves. And in fact, if and when we are triggered in those situations by others, if we begin with self-compassion, that can actually kind of decrease the amount of anger, hatred, frustration that we want to throw on the person to begin with. So the less triggered we are, the less reactive we are. And then once we cultivate this deep sense of self-compassion, we can then extend that as well. And if we extend compassion towards others, it feels nice. Yeah. Do you have a question in the back? Yeah.
I did. I've been doing a lot of work at, having compassion for people that distract me or the guy at Trader Joe's that puts me in line and not letting it ruin the next hour of my day.
Yeah.
But I do have a question because, my significant other being around people I love, they might have a different reaction to those stimuli than I do. And someone I love might be like, oh man, that guy was such a jerk. And I find myself in a position where I either have to agree with how they're feeling about that person, or I have a urge to help them to not let that distract them, but then I see that as me wanting things to be the way I want them. And so my question is that the right thing?
You're such a guy. Yeah.
It's a bit of a confusing.
Oh, no, it's not really confusing. It's just hard to do.
Yeah.
It's actually crystal clear. You know, from this like male privileged, like just toxic masculinity and wanting to fix the other people. I'm not assuming anything. I don't know who your significant other is. I'm just sensing, I'm discerning based on the way you asked it and your hat that I know where you're coming from, right? So, I don't know if you saw my head nods during that whole process. Now everybody turned around to look at you, so I can put you on the spot. What's your name? Makai. All right, let's all turn and look at Makai. Say hi, Makai. All right. Following the same lines of what I just said, I knew that you could actually handle that as well, because that would fit that ego, right? It makes sense. We love that attention. And in that, is your significant other here with you?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I saw you look that way, so I thought my response would be the same. It's just, well, I don't know if it's easier if they're not here, but so here's the thing. My suggestion is definitely not to try to correct your significant other's views. That will never work in any situation, ever. So, do you live with your significant other?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is going to be wonderful. When you go home this evening, right? When you get there, I want you to tell your significant other that, hey, guess what? I went to this Buddhist thing tonight, and I learned that I'm never going to try to change your views about anything ever. Huh? You definitely don't tell that you accept her. On many levels, that will not work. But no, I mean that very seriously, is that for you to recognize that, yeah, you got two choices in that situation, and you kind of pick your battles. So you as a practitioner, it's like, I talk about this a lot when people say, how do I get my loved one, significant other, friend, whatever, into this stuff? If we turn to somebody and be like, yo, you really need to meditate and calm down, they don't want to hear that. Most importantly, they don't want to hear it from the loved ones. Now, if an absolute stranger, like if your significant other showed up here and listens to me, an absolute stranger, they'd be like, yeah, that dude's right. But if you, who loves her, the person to death, they'd be like, what are you talking about? Right?
Yeah.
So your practice in that moment, what I suggest is to recognize, okay, Makai, in this situation, I'm not going to let it bother me. I'm just going to observe it. And at the same time, when your significant other is letting it bother them, same practice. I'm not going to let it bother me. I'm just going to observe them, right? So it's a balance. It's a delicate balance. If your significant other starts yelling at this person, then you're like, well, yo, I'm trying to practice compassion, and you're just like throwing vegetables at them. So, then I don't know what to tell you, but
That answers my question.
you got it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't correct them. And it's almost like parenting, right? Which I know nothing about because I'm not a parent, but the idea is that you want to model behavior. You want to model the practice. When you're around family, around friends, and you're into this meditation thing, you're into this Buddhist thing, my suggestion is never like bring it up, like talking about it. It's just practice these things. And people may inquire, like, hey, you're not as reactive anymore. How come you're not getting as angry or frustrated? Or how come the dude at Trader Joe's cut you off and all of a sudden you're not yelling at them anymore? Why is that occurring? Maybe that's something to do with the practice that you're bringing into your life, and then maybe others will see that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question kind of related of more people you're not seeing every day. So some things that were said tonight remind me of my mom, like the don't let other people's like suffering bother you. You already have enough suffering in your own life, and like don't try to control the situation. She's always just like so stressed, so worried about everyone. On the way here, I was on the phone with her, and she was like, I can't sleep. I'm just so worried about you guys, your family, and this, that. And so I feel like she would really benefit from meditation and like teachings of Buddhism, but obviously you can't push that.
Right.
Like, how could you? Is there a way you could respond?
Where does your mom live?
Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, one, sounds like you have a great mom, loves you, cares about you, worries about you, and will every moment that you're all alive. So you can count on that for the most part, right, from what you just shared. Could your mom benefit from this stuff? Absolutely, right? Who couldn't? But the trick, which is your question, is how? Like, how do they get into it, right? And there's ways. I mean, there are certain books that you can read that maybe introduce these things, but not from this, like, is your mom heavily religious?
She grew up Catholic, but not so much anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
That plays into it as well, because some people, certain generations, certain religions, are, not a chance that they're going to open up anything around Buddhism. Certain people have maybe more of a science background or an interest in that. There's books around meditation and the impact it has on the brain. There's the Dan Harris, right? The 10% Happier guy. You know that book? You heard that book? Dan Harris, right? Somebody here knows that. Sam Harris, right?
Yeah.
Say again?
Dan Harris is 10%.
Dan Harris is 10% Happier.
Sam Harris is,
Okay. So who am I talking about? The newscaster dude, Dan Harris. So my point is, there are books like that. It's called 10% Happier, right? The dude is total Buddhist, but in such a public mainstream eye, is not going to be out there like, putting on robes and offering incense or anything like that. But introduces it in a way that's super user friendly for somebody who's, I mean, even the title of the name of the book, 10% Happier.
But how do you like give that book, and it almost makes it seem like I'm like better than you? Like, oh, I'm happy. You could be 10% happier. Here's this book.
Amazon, ship it. Yeah.
Nice way, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of intention,
Yeah.
and you can just ship it to your mom, and it didn't even come from you. Mom be like, yo, this book showed up. 10% happier. I want to be 10% happier too. Right? It doesn't say like 100% happy. You're not telling your mom that like she's miserable.
Yeah.
Hey mom, I checked out this book. It was really cool. You should try it. So it's kind of, there are ways like that. It's called, the word is upaya. U-P-A-Y-A. It means skillful means. And when we try to introduce this stuff to people we know and love, it requires skillful means. And sometimes a random anonymous Amazon gift of a book might do the trick. Because yes, as soon as you say, then she may be worried that you're worried about her, and that may cause her to sleep even less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like she already knows I'm worried about her, but yeah, I think the book's a good idea.
Yeah. Kind of gentle introductions to it. Does she ever come visit you?
Yeah.
Here, take her here. Saturday at 11 o'clock. Bring her down on the weekend. Where in Arizona is she from?
Chandler, so it's like Phoenix.
Yeah. I'm school Tucson. I'll bring up Tucson. We'll do some meditation. It'll be great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. What else? Do one more question. Yeah, we'll do two more. Go ahead.
When you were starting off, did you just have tons of problems with pressure points while sitting?
With pressure, oh, you mean like physically?
Yeah.
At that stage, no, because I was 20 and in pretty good physical shape.
Well, I've been
No comment.
I've been sitting for a
Yeah.
while, like
Yeah.
years. But like I feel like ever since I started, like there's not been one time I haven't sat and had like really bad.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I'm just like, it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to deal with physical pain. One is to just embrace the physical pain brings you to the present moment and says, I'm in physical pain. The other thing is, as you age, you're not 20 anymore, right? Now that you're 23, 24, sitting on a cushion, our ego gets like, oh, I must meditate on a cushion. If I'm not on a cushion, that means I'm not meditating properly. You could stand on your head. I shouldn't tell it to you this because you probably would. Most people wouldn't, but you could stand on your head in the corner, and as long as you're focused on sensation of breath, it's just as meditative as sitting on the zafu in some perfect posture. It's about the mind. And if your mind is so wrapped up in the pain, then just go sit in a freaking chair. Like, give up. On the, they're like, no, I'm gonna get there someday. The alternative is you could stretch, you could do yoga, you could get in, more flexible shape.
Yeah.
Which would obviously help out. Totally. So,
Right.
yeah, one more and then we'll close. Go ahead.
There are a number of stand-up comedians who are Muslim, but I've never heard of a Buddhist stand-up comedian.
It's my dream job. I'm not even kidding you.
I think it'd be a good-
Have you heard me talk about that before or no?
No.
Oh, wow. Now I'm really happy because you have just my ego, I always talk about wanting to be a stand-up Buddhist comedian because there are none.
I was thinking, just ask Jeff.
Yeah.
We already have a name for him. We call him the snarky Buddhist.
I think laughter is important. And I think that in Buddhist practice, and again, as I referenced earlier, for me as a Zen practitioner, it's a very serious practice. I mean, you don't smile. You don't look at, how I was trained. You don't look at people. You don't have dialogue. You don't have any sort of emotional expression. It doesn't mean you don't have emotions. It just means you don't have expression. You bow, you chant, it's just rigid and structured. It is military discipline. And that's the training, because you're guarding these senses like, hey, how are you? Give me a hug, I'm so happy, tell me about your day. You got shit to deal with. So you don't have time for any of that stuff. You have to focus on training your mind to be in the present moment. And that's it. So that's how I came into Buddhist practice, right? For that practice for probably 3-4 years. And coming out of that, that's still ingrained in me with Buddhist practice. And I still enjoy that and love that practice. But I think laughter is important. And so the more, the best, to me, my favorite Zen teachers, some living, some no longer living, they laughed constantly. When you come to them with some serious problem and they'll just tell you a joke or sing a beautiful song, you know what happens in that moment? You know what you're not focused on? Your serious problem. And all of a sudden you're laughing and then they're laughing and they're like, wait, what was wrong to begin with? Nothing. So I think if you can bring laughter into your life, not just around Buddhism, it's not about being Buddhist, but whatever struggles, whatever challenges, whatever difficulties you're facing, bring some joy, bring some laughter into your life. That's why I always talk about watch cartoons, whatever it is. Bring joy and laughter into your life, because not just Zen practice, but to me, Zen practice is a metaphor for how we take our lives. And very often we take our lives so seriously. As if everything that happens to us is a life-threatening emergency. And it's not. You'll get through it. And then there'll be another life-threatening emergency. And you'll get through that. And eventually there'll be a life-threatening emergency that you won't get through. And when that moment occurs, on your way out, I hope you can say you laughed a lot. Because if you haven't, then I suggest you do it. Because when that moment happens, you won't get to, well, actually you'll get to do it again, but. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, a few quick announcements from our Dharma Bum host Meredith before you all head out.
Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, Meredith. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night, we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again soon.
Thanks, Meredith.